Probably the biggest problem or opportunity that I faced was really helping the company evolve its culture. And when I became CHRO, Satya Nadella, who was our CEO, was really clear that he wanted to make culture a world-class or a first-class problem opportunity to focus on. He really had a belief that how we did things was going to matter as much as what we did, and that really being clear on our how, our culture in service to a purpose-driven mission, if those could be enduring, that would be a strategic differentiator for us. We knew that what would change, our worldview would change, our solution areas would change, but really focused on that. And we framed the problem as how do we move from a bunch of know-it-alls to a bunch of learn-it-alls. And there are a lot of things about our culture that we loved. We had a history of taking on big, bold goals like a PC on every desktop, a huge spirit of giving. If you think about our founder, Bill Gates, and that spirit of giving, we didn't want to walk away from that, but we did really want to shift from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls, and we thought that would be really key. And so we grounded our culture in a growth mindset. If you think about the solution, I think the solution, I could spend many, many hours on the solution because there wasn't one thing. It started with, I think, our CEO embodying the culture. It started with us spending about a year really defining the Aspire to culture. A lot of times there is a culture, but it's not defined. It's not explicit. We are explicit about what we aspire to, which is this growth mindset, and that we would be on an eternal journey to close the gap between what we aspire and everybody's lived experience, with 220,000 people at the company, having everybody experience that Aspire to culture. And then as part of the solution, it was engaging our managers. The manager played such a key role. It was from an HR perspective, looking at all of our people processes, how we recruit, who we promote, what we celebrate, what we reward, all of that we changed. And then really engaging our employees. Again, culture change can't happen without the employees wanting to embody, the behavior that you're asking them to embody. And so we spent a lot of time with hackathons. Some of our best ideas came from employees. An example was we were looking at diversity and inclusion and women coming in and out of the workforce. And one of the hacks came back and said, if men navigated coming in and out of the workforce, it would sort of level the playing field. And so that was the impetus to have benefits both for maternity leave, but also paternity leave. And so many, many ideas came from activating our employees. I think a big part of the solution was measurement. We've been measuring our culture for many, many years and listening to our employees and using our listening systems to constantly evolve and take action. And then the last thing I would say is, as part of this culture journey, we did what I would say, big symbolic changes, changing some big things that were somewhat iconic that really indicated we really wanted to change. And then small things like just rolling out inclusive behaviors and saying, don't interrupt. And so there are many, many, many things we did. I think the last thing I always say, because I talk to a lot of my peers who are trying to change their culture, and I know 85% try to change and 30% are successful, is, stay humble, stay the course. You've never arrived. Culture is something you earn every day. But I am proud of what collectively Microsoft has done to evolve our culture. I think it's a strategic differentiator. I think a lot of people come for our culture. I think a lot of people stay because of our culture. It's allowed us, I think, to be at the forefront of AI, having that growth mindset and challenging our fixed mindset. I think it's been essential. And we always joke, the minute you think you've arrived, the minute you think you have a growth mindset is the minute you have a fixed mindset. So, I also humbly say there's still a lot for us to learn on this journey. But, if I were to net it out, one of the biggest challenges I think I faced was trying to evolve our culture. Definitely a team sport, definitely many things we did. But I am proud of the culture at Microsoft. And it's certainly one of the reasons why I love being here and why I stay. Everybody said, how are you going to measure this? And in the very beginning, and still, we have measured things like we grounded our culture in a growth mindset. So it started with questions, do you know what a growth mindset is? And just getting a sense of awareness. And then over time, do we embody the growth mindset? Do you feel like you can take risks? And, is it safe to fail if you're helping the company move forward in our agenda? So we've been tracking those dimensions, employee sentiment dimensions around growth mindset, One Microsoft, diversity and inclusion, as well as being customer obsessed. And so that sort of employee sentiment data we've been tracking. But then ultimately we judge ourselves by, are we innovating? And, is that growth mindset in service to our mission? And so we also, over the last 10 years, every EBC I do, which is our executive briefing center where I meet with customers, I say, how many of you worked with us 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, depending on where I've been on this journey? And, most of the time they raise their hand and I say, okay, great. So you knew us before and you know us now. Are you seeing us show up different? Are you seeing us showing up more customer obsessed? Are you seeing us show up more diverse and inclusive? And the number of hands raising over time has gone up. And then I ask, what are you seeing that's different? But also if they don't think we've changed, what is the behavior that you're seeing? And so it's also just, asking the customers. And then ultimately, the proof is in our products, and are we innovating in a way that people love? And I think our ability to lean into this AI era with a growth mindset, do things in a new way, challenge what in the past we would have said we could never do before. I think that's also part of the way we measure if the culture is working. You look at COVID, we never thought we could go through, we never thought we'd be working from home for 3 years effectively. I remember when it first hit and we said, okay, we've got to go home for at least 2 weeks. We have to role model that. And I'm thinking 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I didn't imagine what we would really be facing. But in retrospect, our culture, and that, again, back to that model coach care and our managers really leaning into the care and helping our employees navigate scenarios we never would have imagined. I thought it was unbelievable. And, we measure our culture in those moments too, in terms of how we show up. And does the culture help us in those times? I think we all recognize that you absolutely can't do it alone. So the idea that, you're going to, quote, change culture by yourself, I don't think anybody believes that. I think the key, though, is trying to activate at all levels, really making sure that your CEO is fully on board with the culture change. I say if your CEO is embodying the culture and pushing for the culture change as much as you are, which I've had the honor of having that with our CEO, it is a force multiplier, right? Having a CEO driving is a force multiplier. And it also, if they're not, that breeds cynicism. And that applies at all layers, I talked about. So it starts with the CEO, it's activating, the leadership team, it's activating all the managers, it's allowing employees to feel like their voice can be heard, that they can evolve the culture, whether it be the hackathons or the listening systems or the roundtables, or we did these culture conversations where every team went through these culture conversations and talked about it. I think that the key is involving everybody, because culture ultimately is the sum of everybody's behaviors. And so I think that's been the key, is really relying on and enlisting and inviting everybody to be part of the culture change. That's been hugely important. And then I think the other thing for me is from the very beginning, the people agenda was not HR agenda. It was the senior leadership team and Satya's agenda. I might be the orchestrator and the facilitator and the DRI around that, but I've been lucky to have a team that feels as equally responsible for our culture, right? Versus this is something you outsource to HR. I think that's the key thing. When you believe that people thriving means your business thrive, and so one, begets the other, then it's the leadership team's agenda to drive the people agenda.